Man may act rightly, contrary to the decrees of God, imprinted as laws in our soul or in that of the prophets, but not against the eternal decree of God that is inscribed throughout the entire universe and that concerns the order of all nature.
If we were to define Spinoza's ethics, we could say that, for Spinoza, there is only one goal we should pursue: joy. It is solely for this reason that we should seek wisdom, what he called the second and third kinds of knowledge. And only for joy does life make sense. To understand the concept of joy, it is necessary first of all to enter the first chapter of the Ethics and the theological political treatise, in which he shows us how the figure of the anthropomorphic, transcendental God is untenable. Being conceived as a judge who wields power, contrary to common belief, this figure prevents us from attaining our joy and only brings sadness, obstructing reason from knowing God as immanent, inseparable from nature, free, and self-caused. For the philosopher, it is absurd for God to exist as described in the revealed word, as a being limited by a definable figure, that is, with a body and shape. If this were so, knowing that a body consists of width, length, and depth, it would mean that God could be divided, and everything divisible is finite, and all that is finite suffers. It would be a complete contradiction. Spinoza demonstrated that God has an infinite and eternal nature, and that everything that exists exists in God, and that all events occur according to the laws of his infinite nature. Therefore, God has no body. God is the very infinite itself, acting independently of any external cause. In turn, everything in nature is finite and determines to operate according to another finite cause, and that cause, for the same reason, according to another, and so on, up to God and his immutable laws. The human intellect is not an absolute mode, but a defined mode. All things follow necessarily from the existing nature of God, and by the necessity of this nature, they are determined to act in a defined manner. Only God is free, and could never be constrained, as theologians and religious people claim, that everything depends on God's will, and that things could have been different. It is impossible for God's will to be modified, for that would imply an existence outside God, something independent of him, subjecting God to a fate, to a becoming, to passions like human compassion, mercy, anger, grace, love, hate, etc. God is nature, or the naturing nature. Spinoza expelled transcendence from philosophy. Immanence, the nature belonging to itself, replaced transcendence. Any attempt to unite reason and the divine is merely the image of thought, subjective assumptions that are transcendental illusions trapped in the plane of immanence. Not even Pascal's wager escapes these demonstrations. God cannot punish, as in the revealed word, because he did not fix eternal laws, but only decrees through the prophets, like a legislator or prince issuing legal rules for maintaining the state. And this was no novelty. Wherever state and myths unite, people feared evil and lived enslaved under the orders of fiction. Regarding humans, Spinoza categorized their actions based on two primitive passions, joy and sadness, and a third, which constitutes the essence of man, desire. These passions enslave man in his existence, as they are at the mercy of how nature and external ideas affect his mind, agitated by external causes, like a boat adrift, tossed by contrary winds from side to side. The common man, immersed in the first kind of knowledge, relies only on opinion and imagination, and therefore lives enslaved to confused ideas about how God or nature acts on him. Man is affected by sadness. To free himself from it, only a contrary and stronger affection, joy, can liberate him from sorrow. Sadness diminishes our power to act. Joy revitalizes us, increasing our power to act. In the second kind of knowledge, man distinguishes truth from falsehood. He no longer bases his passions on opinion or imagination, but on the act of understanding. He knows that things are not merely contingent, but necessary. He understands that passions are produced by external forces. Only joy can destroy sadness. Yet, still subject to the chance of external things and ideas, man does not fully possess joy. He has not yet reached the third kind of knowledge. Upon attaining the second kind of knowledge, man stands at the threshold of the third kind, the joy as conceived by Spinoza. Joy, in a certain sense, is disregarded by people. It remains hidden beneath desire. Desire, the essence of man, produces the passions of sadness and their derivatives, hatred, envy, remorse, compassion, and the passions that stem from joy, love, glory, the misfortune of others for the envious, the abundance of wealth for the greedy. Even a joyful person is not intellectually in possession of joy, living chained to desire and excesses that make him a slave of chance and passions. To approach the third kind of knowledge, the joy or beatitude, it is necessary to finally possess joy, the power to act, which for the philosopher equates to reason and supreme virtue. The mind exists only insofar as it encompasses the current existence of the body. For adequate knowledge of things, man must have intellectual knowledge of God. All things exist in God and are conceived through Him. Even when affected by external causes, man understands sadness as a passion and frees himself from it without relying on chance, producing his own joy. He understands that everything that happened was necessary, including all the sadness he experienced. Human destiny is not free. Only God or nature is free to act unconstrained, as Spinoza explains in Part 5 of the Ethics, of the power of the intellect or human freedom.
Indeed, we see that the sorrow arising from the loss of a good diminishes as soon as the person who lost it realizes that there was no way to preserve it. Likewise, we see that no one pities a child for not knowing how to speak, walk, or reason, and for living, in short, so many years almost unconscious of itself, if, on the other hand, most people were born already adults, and only a few were born as children. For in that case, childhood would be considered not as something natural and necessary, but as a defect or lack of nature.
We see, then, that God is infinite and acts freely upon us. We, in turn, are prisoners of the constraints of external things and ideas. To possess supreme happiness, we must hold on to joy, to intellectual virtue. As a biographer and disciple of Spinoza recounts, in the face of a cruel episode that could have crushed any ordinary soul, he witnessed the philosopher's words.
What is the use of making use of wisdom if, falling into the same passions as the common people, we do not have the strength to rise again by ourselves?